The business of education, not easy around here these days.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
My guest tonight is Tim Duffy from the Rhode Island Association of School Committees, or something like that. You know, the School Committee Association. I don't know. I'll figure out the acronym. But Tim's always been, I think, a staunch, articulate defender of the school committee position in general, but more than that, for me, has been a real resource of objective analysis on a bunch of things going on educationally. Hasn't been an easy time at the General Assembly for anything that reflects on municipal, governmental funding issues and the like, and I'm interested to see what he has to say about a whole bunch of things. So welcome aboard. Thank you very much for tuning in. Just as we were getting our production, you know, we produced this show midday. Just as that was happening, the Rose Garden became a scene today. We don't have any of that video. We'll catch up tomorrow on it. But I guess there was a big infrastructure meeting scheduled for the president and Democratic leadership. The tea leaves had already been read that they weren't going to be able to put a deal together because they disagree on some of the numbers. But the president, after hearing earlier in the day that Nancy Pelosi referred to the president as someone heading up a cover-up, he let them come to the White House, and then he undressed them, told them that there will be no deals on infrastructure or anything as long as he's under investigation, and then went to the Rose Garden to tell us all the same thing. Somewhere along the line, we're going to have to figure out how to walk and chew gum at the same time, Mr. President. And I wonder whether this erodes the base's confidence in the president or buoys it. I can't tell anymore, ever. But we shall see what the next hour or two brings. In the meantime, our local congressman from the 1st District, David Cicilline, is making news because he is one of those who says it's time for an impeachment inquiry. He tweeted out such, and that was obviously 2 days ago, suggesting that if the White House counsel didn't testify, we ought to have an impeachment process begin. Now, there's a big split, there's a fissure in the Democratic House organization, right? Not all of them believe that this is the right thing to do. Some think they're being baited. Others say there's no way we can get all the information we want unless we have an official impeachment inquiry. That also suggests that we're not paying attention to the officialdom that Congress has in front of it now, where they can't get any cooperation. I don't see how that's going to change. And if they think it's going to change because some judge says it ought to change, I think they're not reading what's coming from the White House, which is, we don't like it, the heck with you. And I don't care if you're a judge, I don't care if you're the chairman of a committee, I don't care who you are. That's where we are right now. All right, so how about this headline? We have the Coventry folks reject their budget with a massive voter turnout of 8%, which then causes the school system to say, uh-oh, we got big problems, with the next headline. And here's a description of the big problem that they have.
I wish we weren't having this conversation.
Coventry's superintendent is taking the heat as he says the town's schools are now in survival mode.
I had an email today from a young junior, and she was angry at me, and I understand, but how I'm destroying her high school experience. It should be a positive time.
This year's proposed budget was voted down by taxpayers last Thursday, which Superintendent Craig Levis says could lead to 353 teachers in the district being laid off. He says what's especially frustrating is that only 8% of Coventry voters weighed in last week on an issue that is so incredibly important to the town's future.
As a superintendent, as an educational leader, this contradicts everything that I believe in. But I got to balance the budget.
Levis says that's what they're still trying to figure out. In the meantime, he says laying off the majority of teachers will give the district time to prepare.
We can't run a district minus 353 people, but it's really about giving us flexibility to restructure the high school.
He says that could involve drastically reducing or eliminating athletics, after-school activities, and clubs. They would also look into offering double sessions at the high school. This model would mean teachers would teach all day, and the number of them would be drastically reduced. Meantime, students would only attend either a morning or afternoon session to only get their core required classes.
So, kids need to come and have a complete experience. We're going to eliminate that for them.
The superintendent says none of these possible actions are threats. They're the reality, and he hopes this means more people will come out this week and stand up for Coventry schools.
But if this is the true sentiment of the community, think about what that says for the future of Coventry. Would people with children want to move here?
That's a good question. Would people with children want to move here? The sentiment of everyday citizens in investing in the schools is at an all-time low. Well, why is that?
I think, well, part of it is...
By the way, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
What's going on?
Well, Rhode Island is witnessing an aging population. We've had population decline, and we have older senior citizens are a demographic that is dominating the Rhode Island landscape. And as such, they're living on, I understand their plight, they're living on fixed incomes, and they don't have children in the schools, and they don't see the investment, and they may not understand or appreciate the complexity that schools now have to deal with. In a day and age, even in my era, rarely did we talk about school psychologists, rarely did we talk about school social workers. We're providing more services. Some of those services are dictated by state policy, some are by federal policy, some of it's case law emanating from our judicial system. So I think that for a lot of people, they're taking a look at education. They may be disillusioned with the RICAS scores. And they're voting in some instances in the sense of their pocketbook. I will say that it was in a shockingly low turnout, and I don't know who's responsible for generating support for the budget. My understanding was the school committee and the town council came to a reasonably good agreement as to what was needed by the schools. The schools didn't get everything they wanted from the council, but they were amenable to what was the final settlement was. And it was 2,200 voters that rejected it. 6 months ago, that was 14,000 people that showed up in the statewide election.
Yeah, it is. It's incredible. It's incredible. I think you gave a great explanation. This takes my breath away. It literally puts me in a place where I just don't understand what's happening. I think you hit all the buttons. It used to be, though, somewhere, somehow, in the category of used to be, in the old days.
We're showing that used to be age now.
It used to be that there was advocacy for school issues, almost a marketing of school issues from community to community. And I've lived in a bunch of different states, so I'm not sure that this is a Rhode Island thing, too. But there was real hard advocacy, salesmanship on the part of those who represented and governed the schools to say, hey, listen, this is really important. Not every community has a vote for the budgets that they enact. Coventry has this unique system where they vote the budget. Clearly, they don't have a responsible constituency to continue to do that. They really ought to put up another referendum which says, you want us to just deal with this on our own? Because we will, right?
Yeah, I think Coventry kind of reflects, even though this is a recent change in their charter, this quaint but archaic concept.
The vote is new?
The vote is new. They used to do a financial town meeting, so the referendum is new, but it's akin to a town meeting, and I think that the financial town meeting has outlived its usefulness. The complexity of the issues involved, if we're looking at representative government, then council people that are elected and school committee people that are elected devise a budget, they put it in place. If people are unhappy with the result, they can vote them out of office. But if you have enough supporters to stack a high school auditorium when a financial town meeting is taking place, if you're the taxpayer group, you're going to prevail. If, on the other hand, you're the parent-teacher organizations and you have more supporters show up, you're going to prevail. I don't think it's a good way to administer not only educational policy, but municipal policy in general.
I agree. And then there's this whole complete lack of acumen for what's going on. I don't expect juniors in high school to really understand. I hope their parents do. But in that package where the superintendent says, oh, one of my juniors came up and says, you're ruining my educational experience. No, he's not ruining your educational experience. The voters just socked it to you. You know, now I'm guessing he didn't say that to her because he's a professional and he's trying to, you know, maintain some sense of, I don't know, balance, common sense, calm. I don't know.
And it you know, for that experience, it may transcend interscholastic athletics. I think that's the first thing we always look at. But I'm sure Coventry has advanced placement courses where kids can start, get a leg up on their college career by starting to take college level courses at the high school level. All of that may be in jeopardy now.
Yeah, and so the parents who are going to come and say, you're taking this away from my kids, whether it be that curriculum issue or a football helmet or whatever it happens to be, the response ought to be from the school system. Did you vote, by the way?
Yeah.
By the way, did you vote? Did you not vote? And there's this other thing that goes on, as you well pointed to. Those whose kids have left the system feel, for some reason, like they are done investing in it, to the detriment of their own property taxes, home values, quality of life, future. You know, why is this?
And they may not see the connection. I don't, you know.
How do you not see the connection?
Well, I think for some people, it harkens back to, well, we never needed these services and these programs when we were going to school or when our children were in school.
Tim, I don't think they look that deep.
They may not, but
I don't think they look that deep.
I think it's somewhat confusing to them for them to rationalize, why do we need school psychologists? Why do we need school social workers?
But do you think they're actually making those determinations when they're voting no on a budget, digging deep into who school psychologist is doing what? I think they're just angry, and they see increases, modest increases in their taxes continually, and they just want to say no because they feel like they can, and they're done paying.
And quite honestly, the RICAS scores probably added a certain cynicism to the whole process.
And we should talk about that, because I'm trying to figure out if there actually is a bottom-up demand for excellence in this state, in the school systems. We'll talk about that when we come back. Stay with us. So, you know, Coventry is a mess, and the folks in Coventry have gone ahead and done it to themselves, and it's all part of whatever political dynamic that exists in the country today. You know, I've been asking, and I will ask the new commissioner. I don't think she has a sense. She's probably still in that honeymoon rah-rah stage. She's only been here a few weeks. But I've asked a lot of people who are playing the role of movers and shakers in this education world whether or not we really have a organic demand for excellence in school performance in this state, whether it's percolating from the citizens. This Coventry story tells me no. What do you think?
Well, I looked at Massachusetts. In 1993, their state Supreme Court found that education was a constitutional right. So they allowed students to go into court and sue for their education. That precipitated the Education Reform Act in the legislature and a $2 billion commitment by Governor Weld at the time, who was a fiscal conservative, but demanded accountability. I think that with all of the best of intentions that's going on in the legislature, with study commissions and reports and a new commissioner, we're never going to get to that sort of education reform unless a student can walk into Superior Court and say, this system is shortchanging me. Or to put it bluntly, the system's screwing me. And until that happens, I don't think you're going to be able to, I mean, all of the intentions are well.
But how is that going to get done?
It's changing the Constitution. amending the Constitution to make sure that a Rhode Island student has a right to an education.
Most people watching this think that's just semantics. But
Most people don't understand that it's not a constitutional right in the state of Rhode Island. Most people assume that it is. It's not. Our Supreme Court ruled in 1995 that no one in the state was entitled to an education. That's appalling. And they did that because the plaintiffs in the case, Pawtucket and Woonsocket, had said that the way we fund education out of property tax dollars violates the Equal Protection Clause in Article 1. Well, it won't violate the Equal Protection Clause if the Supreme Court says it's not a right, and that's what they said.
So you think the court case and a constitutional change, this is like the chicken and the egg, right? Chicken or the egg. The constitutional change will motivate people to demand more? Or the people wanting to, being motivated to demand more will cause a constitutional change?
It's litigation. The courts will tell the state and local policymakers what they have to do. Because up until this point, I think we've lacked the political will to actually direct education the way we need to. I think it's all great intentions, but at the end of the day, if a student can't demand through a legal process the right to an education, the first time the recession winds blow, funding formula goes a little soft, we don't necessarily fund this. Already we have too many categorical funds.
Are there financial parameters tied to the Massachusetts
There certainly was.
metric?
Bill Weld said, yeah, I'll pony up $2 billion to get the
I
failing
remember the
schools
initial
up.
investment, but does the definition of the decree, or does the decree define what is minimum investment?
What it came down to...
Your recessionary winds blowing thought.
Well, essentially, I think that the court cases have morphed from equity into adequacy. So what does it take to adequately educate a student? In Rhode Island, we have the basic education program as a definition of what it takes to adequately educate a student. But we don't back it up. We don't say that if a school district doesn't have the resources to meet the requirements of the basic education program, we're going to intervene and demand that they do that. And that intervention may come with financial consequences for the state. So we've kind of walked away from it. We said, yes, this is what we know students need to know in order to succeed and perform in successfully in life. But while we've got a set of rules, we don't necessarily have to follow those rules.
Well, we had some ed reform work here in the General Assembly in the last couple of weeks. We'll see what Tim thinks about that in the context of this conversation. Stay with us. Yeah, Tim and I are sitting here during the break talking about if we feel this pulse from you, whether you're demanding a better education performance. There are mover shaker groups. The Rhode Island Foundation has put a good team together. I'm sure you're advising them, right? You're probably sitting on that board.
Yeah.
I think they're earnest in trying to do the right thing. We have some General Assembly members who cooked up an ed reform package that I think begins to mimic that which Massachusetts did. If we're going to comp ourselves against Massachusetts, we probably ought to steal their playbook, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You happy with that?
I'm very pleased with what the legislature has put forward so far. I mean, I think it's important to have common curricular frameworks across the 36 school districts in the state. And, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're all going to be on page 10 of the text on this date or that date. It gives you the latitude to be somewhat experimental around curriculum. So I think that's important. What I think they lack a little bit, and I'm not saying we need $2 billion, but we need to have some pot of money for intervention. The state in 2011 was the last year that they funded about $3.5 million in a progressive support and intervention.
Intervention means?
To be able to go in. I think I go back to when Peter McWalters intervened in Hope High School. And,
oh, I see. Okay.
And,
right.
And that's a good example of why you need to have at least the support to do that. Because when he walked away, when the department said, all right, we've achieved success at Hope High School, and then they gave it back to the city. It was only a year or two before the city said we can't afford to sustain the change.
Are you okay with the school committees discharging some responsibilities for personnel hiring and all that kind of thing?
We've been talking about that for a long time.
Because it's been a burden.
It's been a burden, and my counterpart in Massachusetts said the best thing to happen for his members, then they call them school committee members in Mass, was when they got out of the hiring business. So absolutely, we should definitely be out of the hiring business. That should take place closest to the school. So that principal knows, he or she knows who they need, who they want, and that's what they should do.
You know, what's always been ironic, I think, about Tim, for me, is that you're one of the most clear thinking, speaking, and good minds on education here in the state. You had an organization that by its very nature drives me crazy. School committees, I think, are riddled with incompetence, and I'm tired of, thankfully, most communities have a player or two that can lead, but they're riddled with people who aren't up to the task. And I want to see a melding of town governments, city governments, so that we can get rid of this contentiousness and this, we come up with our own idea, we beg for permission, and then, you know, this thing has got to change.
One of the things I think, you know, and I worked in Providence in the mayor's office for Joe Paolino for about 6 years. One of the things I think in Providence is a good example. If they want to intervene in Providence and begin to start the process, then change the charter. Make the mayor the head of the school committee. You know, that's what happened. Mayor Mitchell, who is, I have great respect for out of New Bedford, chairs that school committee. So there's ownership of the process. Right. So if there are problems within the school system, then the municipality can't walk away from it and say no.
Most communities in Mass do that. Most communities in Mass do that. And I know you and I have had a conversation about home rule and all that kind of a thing. Seems to me that either well, the state seems like it feels like it can run the show anyway these days, right? The Evergreen deal. Now we're telling school committees and communities how they can negotiate with their. I'm sure that drove you crazy.
That had detrimental impact on student learning.
I hate the phrase "half pregnant." It's a ridiculous phrase, but you know. Toe in the water, whatever. They dip their toe in the water there. Can we get some consistency of governance around here?
We want to move to a site-based management model. So we want principals to have more authority, and they should, over their budgets, over their personnel. Absolutely. But if you have a collective bargaining agreement and you're at the loggerheads, and the collective bargaining agreement continues, and it says, no, you can't devolve those powers down to the principal, we're defeating ourselves. So, I mean, in one sense, you know, the education reform takes one step forward, but may take a step backward if the contract doesn't allow them to make the changes.
No, I get it. I get it completely. Are you bullish? I got 30 seconds here. Are you bullish right now on Rhode Island's education comeback or recovery or advancement, or do you feel the listlessness that I do?
When the good Lord handed out cynicism, I got in the line 3 times. So, I mean, it's hard. And again, unless there's a compelling force, litigation, to make the change will last up to a point, and then when we have a bad economic time, it'll fade away.
All right. Who's going to sue? Will you? Thank you, sir. Final word when we come back. All right. Oh, there I am. Sorry, that's my bad. So, Lieutenant Governor's on stage for tomorrow. He's $250 less richer because he had to write a check to the Ethics Commission because he couldn't remember the form to figure out when you take a trip. I'm sure he'll have very little to say about that tomorrow, but we'll press him on that and other initiatives. I'll talk to you on the radio at 3 on WPRO. Good night.